September 11, 2001 was supposed to be like any ordinary day. The adults headed toward work and the children went to school. However, at 8:46 a.m., the lives of many Americans and the nation changed forever. At 7:59 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 left Boston's International Airport with 92 people on board headed toward Los Angeles. By 8:19 a.m., flight attendants on the plane alerted ground personnel that the plane had been hijacked, and American Airlines notified the FBI immediately. At 8:40 a.m., the Federal Aviation Administration alerted the Northeast Air Defense Sector. The sector commanded 2 fighter planes to locate and tail Flight 11. However, it was too late, and at 8:46 a.m., Flight 11 crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center, killing everyone on board and hundreds inside the building. The New York Police Department and Fire Department were immediately dispatched to the World Trade Center. President George W. Bush was also notified of the crash while he was visiting an elementary school in Florida. By 9:02 a.m., orders were given to evacuate the South Tower, in which 14,000 people began to evacuate. Just as people thought the worst was over, a second plane, United Airlines Flight 175, crashed into the South Tower at 9:03 a.m. Everyone on board was killed along with hundreds inside trying to evacuate. Between 9:08 a.m. and 9:21 a.m., all planes going to and from New York were banned. All bridges and tunnels in the New York City area were also closed. After both towers were hit, many thought the worst was over, but they were wrong. At 9:37 a.m., hijackers on Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon, killing 59 in the plane and 125 military and civilians inside the building. For the first time in history, the FAA grounded all flights over or bound for the United States. 3,300 commercial flights and 1,200 private planes were grounded in the next 2.5 hours. Along with flights being grounded, the White House and U.S. Capitol building were evacuated. Famous monuments in other areas in the D.C. area were also evacuated. Back in New York City right before 10 a.m., the South Tower of the World Trade Center collapsed. Many watched in shock as the building fell and collapsed to the ground. People had to run from the building as it collapsed to get away from the dust and debris of the building, but most were covered in ash. Flight 93 left New York that morning. At 10:07 a.m., the passengers and crew members on the hijacked Flight 93 learned about the attacks of New York and Washington after contacting family. Everyone on Flight 93 planned to retake the plane. In response, the hijackers crashed the plane in a field in Somerset County, Pennsylvania, killing the 40 passengers and crew on board. About 20 minutes after Flight 93 crashed, the North Tower collapsed and fell. It lasted 102 minutes after Flight 11 crashed into it. The city of New York looked demolished from what was left after both towers collapsed. The shock of the final tower falling showed the destroyed nation over the terrorist attacks. After both towers of the World Trade Center collapsed, Mayor Rudolph Giuliani called for Lower Manhattan to evacuate. Over 1 million people evacuated that day. After the evacuation, the search for survivors began and lasted for many days. Loved ones refused to give up hope. The cleanup of the collapsed buildings also took place after the evacuation that lasted a few weeks. There was nothing left except ash and piece by piece of what used to be the World Trade Center. Today, a memorial rests where the towers once stood. It is named Ground Zero. Many go to visit the memorial to remember lost loved ones and the day the nation came together as one. America will never forget the terrorist attacks on the nation that made us stronger and united than ever before.